Welcome to week 13 of Valor Discipleship. This week we'll be continuing our discussion on forgiveness. In week 12 homework, you did a couple of interesting things. I want to share and talk about those just a little bit. The first thing that you did was you put yourself in the place of God and you practiced forgiveness the way God does on someone in your life that you're struggling to forgive. This assignment came about when I was on a walk one day and I found myself really getting aggravated in my thoughts at someone. I had a friend and I was really struggling to forgive her. It seemed like everything that she did was just frustrating to me. And I was even frustrated the way she handled herself and the way she handled others. And as I was walking, I just prayed, God, take this from me. I'm tired of avoiding her because the way that she acts offends me, and just really realizing that that was unforgiveness. That was unforgiveness in my life. And so I was walking, I felt like God was giving me wisdom to say, okay, think of her as you and think of yourself as me and how I forgive you. And that will help you come to a place of forgiving her. And so he began to ask me, what is it about her that you're struggling with? What is it about that you're offended? So I began to list these things. And I felt like God kind of nodded and said, yeah, you do the same thing. You do the same thing. But how do I treat you? I treat you with love and forgiveness and compassion. I love you enough that really everything that you do is filtered through my word. I continually forgive you even when you don't deserve it. I continually forgive you when you do the same thing that I've already forgiven you for. He said, that's what I want you to do to her. I want you to begin to walk in a spirit of forgiveness and forgive her the way I have forgiven you. So in your homework, you were to do that. You were to think of someone in your life that you struggle with, that you have unforgiveness for. Maybe you're just offended by, and you continue to have negative thoughts about them. Put yourself in and treat them the way God treats you. And that can just be a beautiful thing. If we learn to walk through our lives in that spirit of forgiveness of I understand the amazing thing that God did when he forgave me. I am amazed at how he continues to forgive me. Then I can do that the same. So I'm praying for you this week that you will have a fuller understanding, a grasp of the way God has forgiven you. So therefore, it comes easier for you to forgive others. The other thing you did is you read a story about the forgiveness jail. And just that place of sometimes we have a trouble forgiving ourselves and we think we deserve to stay where we are. And so I just want you to read through that story and then discuss together, where are you in that? Where do you see yourself? And that you would learn to forgive yourself and learn to forgive others and truly walk in the spirit of forgiveness. Today we're going to talk about in week 13 offenses. And I just want to share with you that being offended is still a form of unforgiveness. And sometimes we think of unforgiveness as this big thing that somebody did something horrible to us and we have not forgiven them. But unforgiveness can be offenses as well, even to acquaintances. Maybe just offended by the way people act, offended by people you don't even know. Maybe you're watching in the news or you're seeing someone from afar and you have a critical spirit towards them and you're offended by the way they act. Why do they do that? That can be unforgiveness. Or maybe it's just the acquaintance in the store. The clerk was rude to you, and so you just be rude back. You've chosen not to forgive them. And so we are continually being faced with the choice of forgiving or being offended and walking in unforgiveness. And so I love how that spirit of forgiveness is a constant for us. God's continually reminding us. So my prayer as well is that it would be at the forethought of your minds. In what ways am I not forgiving people? In what ways am I offended by people? And to understand that truly is a spirit of unforgiveness and that we can walk in full forgiveness. The first thing to doing that is realizing that what forgiveness is and realizing that we sometimes do it. And then asking God to help us to always see people the way he sees them, to treat them the way he treats us, and to truly be patient with them. In your book on page 55, there is a list of things that mark down signs that you have forgiven someone. And so I want you to take time this week in your homework to go over it, but I want to go over a couple of these with you. And one of them is not avoiding that person. And that would mean that instead of facing them, instead of thinking, if I'm with them, I'm going to be rude and mean to them, that's a sign that you have not forgiven them. If you're continually trying to avoid that person or not be with them. But a spirit of forgiveness is the ability to think about someone, to be with someone without having negative feelings, without continually being offended by everything that they say and do. Now we know that sometimes God calls us to put boundaries in our lives. So there's some people that we are not to be in close relationship with, but it's not because we haven't forgiven them in our hearts. It's because we know that it's not healthy for us or for them to be together. And so remember, forgiveness is about us. It's about in our hearts forgiving someone. And therefore, we can think about them. If we need to, we can be around them without harboring unforgiveness in our hearts. And another way that you can know you've forgiven someone is when you can begin to pray for them. You begin to pray God's blessing over them. You begin to pray salvation for them if they don't know Jesus. And so that sense of being able to actually pray over them with a pure heart, that's a sign in your heart that you've forgiven them. That's why God says pray for your enemies. He knew that important piece of being able to pray for someone that you are unhappy with or has wronged you, that begins to formulate forgiveness in your heart. So if you're struggling forgiving someone, begin to pray for them. Ask God to show you them through his eyes. Begin to pray, ask God how to pray for them. And that truly is a way to move towards forgiveness. So many good things in this week's lesson. I believe that we are going to be a people that walk in the spirit of forgiveness. We aren't constantly offended. We aren't constantly remembering what people have done to us. We're not constantly being critical thinkers, but instead we are looking and thinking upon people the way God does. So I just want to pray for you this week that God will give you a great week and that you truly will get a taste of what it means to continually walk more and more in the spirit of forgiveness. So have a great week. This week in your homework, you're going to be writing a letter of forgiveness to someone. Now, this letter does not necessarily need to be sent. And actually, it doesn't really need to be read by anybody but you. But I want you to take time this week, and you have the assignment in your homework, and it gives you instructions on how to write the letter and what to write in the letter. I just want to encourage you that there have been many who have truly been set free when they wrote this letter. There's something about writing the letter, asking God to help you write the letter, asking God to help you forgive, and writing all these things out, and then believing that God will free you up, that you will not be tied or bound by unforgiveness any longer. So be sure and write your letter this week. Again, it doesn't have to be sent to someone. If God puts on your heart to send it, then send it. But if not, this is for you and God and a time that you can be with him to help you forgive someone in your life.